All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session of the Family Table, where we are hoping to have conversations that shape the way that we parent.
Yeah, we are Rich and Cori Clausen in the thickets of parenting, and we are super excited to welcome our guests, Brian and Michelle Spaulding, and this conversation around technology, something near and dear to our heart and your heart as well.
I don't know if I'd call it near and dear.
Okay, a terrifying subject for us, at least I feel like. Do you guys want to just introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I'm Brian Spaulding, and this is my wife Michelle, and we've been married for 23 years. Michael Jordan. And let's see, we have 3 kids. Macy, she's 19. She'll be a sophomore at Corbin. Carter is 18. He'll be a freshman at GCU. And then Owen is 16. He's a junior here at Cross Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So today we want to talk about media, internet, electronics.
Because we're in the thickets. We have a 12-year-old who is just, can I get a Kindle? Can I get a cell phone? Can I, just like ramping up.
Some sort of device.
Some sort of any device. So what did you guys do? Let's just do one with cell phones. So what was kind of your take on cell phones, and how did you introduce that in?
Yeah. One thing we did is we never ever bought them technology. That was kind of a way to keep it like, if you want this bad enough, then you can pay for it, where they would save up and they bought iPods first. And that actually worked out really good because we were able to put on, we went, with Apple, so we were able to put on restrictions. Okay. Same restrictions you'd have as on a phone, but the iPods only work in Wi-Fi. We had passwords, so any game they wanted to download, we had to check out first. Like we took all the store was not on there, they had no access to the store or to the internet or, anything like that. It was very locked down.
It was literally just games and music.
And
so then from there,
texting.
You made the progression, I'm assuming, to a phone, probably the next.
That was when they were 16.
So 16, okay.
16.
And was that like a magical number for a certain reason?
We flipped a coin.
Just kind of like...
I will say that it has been very different with the first and third born, because I feel like Owen is 16 now, so they all have phones.
So then how did you progress then? Let's just talk, transition a little bit to social media. So how did you introduce that, and what did that look like? So if you don't have internet on your phone, then how did you introduce, or did you not? Did you not use social media? But I'm assuming having a daughter, some sort of Snapchat or whatever.
We decided to get a family account, so it was Spaulding Family 5 still. Okay. So it said family in the title. And then it was on my phone, and we learned to navigate what does it look like, what's the ins and outs, how do you message, how do you, we learned it.
So together you learned it as you with the apps. Okay.
Yes. So the access to it was on my phone, so she would ask to I'd give her every night. She could look at it. Okay. So it wasn't something she had access to pull out. Yeah. And she would post, and she would write Macy's post, and she would post stuff, and
this is not mom.
Then we know this is not mom. Exactly. And she would, then people knew, her friends knew that this was a family account. So there was boundaries, natural boundaries there, because they weren't, message things that they wouldn't want the mom and dad to see. Yeah. And then on her 16th birthday, I think that's when it was that we just, turned Instagram over, so she was able to download.
Made her own account.
Instagram, and have her own account, but we had the password to her account. That worked out really well. It really taught, just kind of the culture. Like, we would see things on that would come up in the feeds, and even family members who were maybe not believers, where they would post things, and that would go against our values. We would be able to discuss.
Speak into that.
Yeah, speak into that, and even speak into it as a family, sit down and...
So a good teachable moment. Yeah.
So did you follow her in her accounts, or would you occasionally log in and kind of snoop?
We followed her, and we...
Stalked her.
I was going to say, Brian was smiling. I think that maybe there might have been some snooping.
But that was always something we were very upfront. this is about a tool of communication, but it's not to have private conversations or, which should happen.
Right.
You know, like you should have those
Yeah.
things with your friends that you don't want to talk to mom and dad about, but that should happen in person, not over.
Yeah.
Not over text.
Not over text.
Which kind of brings up a good point, and I don't know, Brian, if you want to jump in on this, but like how that balance between maybe the phone relationships and like face-to-face relationships, like
Kids are going to think that, hey, that's how I have a relationship. So how did you balance that? Because it's just so easy to shoot texts back and forth, and then all of a sudden you see kids in the lobbies of
They're
schools
not even
and
talking,
they're not talking
they're
to each
just
other,
on their
they're
phone.
literally texting each other, and it's like, okay, hold on.
how do we, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we've told all three of the kids that, you know, once you start relationships with the opposite sex, then you shouldn't be texting them more than you're talking to them face to face.
Okay.
So we've put an importance on that there should be that communication, interpersonal skills instead of just through text.
Can you give us an
That's-
example of a conversation you had, like a teachable moment or a conversation you had around that? Can you think of one?
Yeah, I guess when they're starting to, how do you say it?
Yeah.
Put an interest in the other persuasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then yeah, you really need to speak into that and just say, hey, we noticed that you guys are texting a lot more than you're actually.
Give a little relationship coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots
Don't
of
assume they know how to
lots
do it.
of
Right.
Yeah,
lots
yeah,
of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And actually gave a really neat opportunity to speak in to that relationship because we read it. You know, we
Yeah.
read it. And
Yeah,
if they didn't
yeah.
want us to read it, then they wouldn't have, yes.
Yeah.
And would you just like kind of go grab their phone and say, I'm going to look through this, or you sit
Yeah.
down with them to do that, or what did that look
Yeah,
like?
usually at night they have to turn it in.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, how did you do
Yeah.
that? Did they turn it in and
Yeah.
hey, did you have a basket or how
Well,
did that work?
I want to hear about how
Oh.
they approach the kids and
Oh, yeah,
how
yeah.
you go about
Okay,
reading
okay,
their
go for
text
it.
messages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it hidden at night? You'd sneak it in the middle of the
Right,
night?
little flashlight on the covers.
Yes. It was at night.
Yeah, usually it was at night. And then we would just, you know, pick the phone up and scroll through.
Okay.
And they would know, the next day.
Just tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
I was
would
looking
say-
They would
through.
just say, hey, we were just checking things out and
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything looks good. You guys are doing
Yeah.
a great job.
But they
Or-
knew it. I'm assuming you'd had conversations about that. Like,
Yes, it was. We felt like we needed to be real consistent with every couple weeks, just getting bits of conversations and saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
we noticed this. It's maybe you want to think about this. Maybe you could say this differently because this is
differently.
Significantly.
That's the problem with written
Yes.
conversation
Yes, and a
versus
text.
face
Yes.
to
Exactly,
face, right?
exactly.
Yes.
Okay, let's just talk about very practical cell phones. Can they be in the rooms? Do you have a basket? What
Yeah.
about when people come over? Like what were kind of just
Yeah.
some very practical cell phone etiquette?
Yeah, we made sure that when people came over or we were over at other people's house, it was,
No cell phone.
yeah, just keep it in the pocket. Let's build relationships and
Okay.
be with the others.
Yep.
When we leave or after they leave or whatever, then you can check whatever.
Okay.
We didn't really have a basket. I think just at night it needed to be in our room.
Okay.
So they were good about that. And then, if it wasn't, there were consequences the next day if you lost your phone for the day or whatever. Let's see.
But you were really good at, like, when kids came over. I just felt bad because I didn't want to push what we were convicted about onto
somebody else.
Yeah, onto somebody else, and I didn't want anyone to feel like we were better than, just like,
totally,
I
totally.
just really struggled, but it was something that the Holy Spirit really convicted us about in protecting them, and so
cell phones and sleepovers.
cell
That'll
phones
just
and
be kind of our
sleepovers. So,
cell
so
phones
I
and
had
sleepovers,
on my note app,
Yeah.
I had, like, when people would come over, I would just send this text that says something like this.
Yeah.
We have an unplugged rule at our house for everyone's safety. It is something we set up a couple years ago to protect the boys' minds and hearts from temptation or accidentally stumbling onto inappropriate stuff. If your son wants to bring his phone, then we can collect it with our boys in the evening and give it back in the morning. And then the other one was, whatever kid would love to stay the night tonight. However, we have a rule for our boys that they can't stay the night where there is internet access after the parents go to bed. We implemented this rule several years ago, and it has gotten more tricky as the boys have gotten older with all the cell phones friends have. I was wondering if you have any policies about collecting phones at night. Please know that I'm not pushing this on you at all and don't want you to feel like you have to. We are fine with picking Carter up late and not having him stay the night. We trust the boys, but know that even innocent searches on social media can turn up some pretty bad stuff. Thank you for inviting Carter. Anyway, something like that.
Love that.
And it was just amazing, the parents' responses.
Wow.
And the way they embraced it
Yeah.
and implemented their own rules, and the kind of group of parents that we were in, they were happy to collect phones. They started doing that.
I think that by alleviating some of those temptations that don't need to be there, it just really leads into one of our fears about pornography. I mean, that is like, I think one of our fears with media, and I think sometimes that drives a certain parenting style out of us, and I don't think that's from a healthy place to parent out of fear. I think it's an easy place to parent out of, because then you just want to shut it down. But I think leading the kids through that. So let's just talk about pornography. Let's just talk about your conversations.
So I guess, what is it? Kids at 8, I think, is the average age that we're hearing nowadays.
First
exposure to
exposure.
pornography. So how did you guys approach that with kids, especially with boys, but I know it's becoming more prevalent with girls too? You start young, you just kind of be up front and talk about it? Do you beat around the bush and kind of
they're going to see
imply?
things. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, I think it should start when they're young. Because, you're all sitting around at night, maybe watching TV or whatnot, and a crazy commercial comes up. So in our house, it's just been, one of us will always have the remote with us. So just in case a crazy commercial does come up, we can either change it, or we just tell the boys and myself, all right, guys, look away. But then once they start getting to that age, then it's, we walk through our boys and through Mace with Passport to Purity.
Okay.
So going into that talk with Passport to Purity, the boys already had,
Some background.
and hey, this is why we turn our heads. This is why we're flipping the channel.
And why did you tell them? So what did you tell them?
Yeah,
What is,
it's to honor the Lord.
Okay.
It's to honor our, future spouses.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not something that we dwell on. That's not how God, ordained the bodies and marriage. It's sex is for marriage only. And so we had that discussion. Hey, fellas, this is why we're turning our heads. So it's all spirit-led and through the Word.
We even had one time, Macy was on Pinterest. That was another thing we.
Pinterest.
That's why I don't use Pinterest. I tell you,
gotta like set some boundaries
unbelievable.
around your Pinterest usage.
Pinterest, get out of here.
That is tricky.
But I had a friend who was one of my closest friends growing up in Washington. Their kids are like cousins to our kids, and they have girls Macy's age, and I don't know if one of their daughters had pinned something Macy pinned, or vice versa, I can't remember, but it was a picture of just two sweet girls, kind of like a nostalgic, like Norman Rockwell type picture, of two girls in a grocery cart, and one was pushing the other one in a grocery cart. Totally cute picture. Yeah. But the link led to like some lesbian website, but they never click on the link. They just pin the pictures. And so her and I started to do some research and just like looking at pins. And for every, I don't know, it was a lot of pins were fine. Most pins were fine, but we started to click. Even our recipe one time was linked to pornography. And it was just how there's a pursuit of young minds, and that was 10 years ago.
I feel like you guys, and I don't remember if through middle school, if it makes a difference, the amount of pornography intake versus high school versus early ed.
I had read specifically in middle school, when they become addicted to something, it is much greater while the mind is or the brain is developing. There's a much greater, and that can be not just with pornography, but there's, different, I am by no means an expert on this, but just different things I've read, like that, you know, those likes that they get, you know,
Facebook
in
maybe
their,
that connection.
in their, as much as you can keep it at bay, yet teach with it and give a little, I don't know. It's definitely not, it's hard to know. It's hard to know.
It's so hard.
I mean, I just think kids need boundaries.
Yes.
They want boundaries whether they want to say it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
They
And they're
need
going to
them.
push, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
And so if they see us on something for 4 or 5 hours a day, why can't they be on it? So it also needs to be modeled by mom and dad.
Yep.
You know, and obviously as they get older, the responsibilities increase, and kind of, you know, we've heard something years ago that as your kids get older, you know, so if they're 8, they should be making 8/18ths decisions. Once they're 17 18ths of their decisions, you know. And so I think as they get older, those responsibilities increase. And
I mean, I know one thing I fear with our kids is the stronger I put boundaries in, I have a tendency to be a rule maker and a taskmaster on that,
Yeah.
which is not approachable for my kids.
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself approachable in the midst of, like you said, maybe putting more boundaries on than their friends have?
Yeah. Brian was always playing with them. Like he would get in and, you know, play video games with them, but it was always in moderation. And then, you know, he would do like, when the boys came over, he'd play poker with them. Like he'd set up a poker, which may not be, someone else might not be the. But
We're not allowed to talk about cards in our church.
I mean,
7 p.m. tonight, come Rich. We'll see you there.
So jumping in with the kids.
There you go. Right.
But the teen boys, you know, come over still, and we have big poker games, and
Yes, so
you know and he's the dealer, you know.
Yeah.
Just like they've gone and forked people's houses, and he's been the driver.
Oh, come on.
what's the address?
But I think just sitting, you know, when the kids are on their phone or whatnot,
Yeah.
just sitting right next to them and say, hey, what are you doing?
Okay.
You know, or
Just
show me that
engaging.
game, or, you know, hey, let me can I try that game?
Yeah, let me try.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, hey, let's battle
like,
it out,
hey,
you know, go
yeah.
against each other, or, you know, what does this mean? And just different things. So they're kind of giving you the,
Lay of the land,
yeah,
sort of.
you know, and so that kind of gives a little connection there too, that makes it more comfortable.
Do you ever break your phone out and say, hey, let me show you how to do that faster?
Yeah. Can you break out your phone real quick so that you can?
I'm telling you.
I mean, I don't want to stumble.
So when I go on Instagram, you know,
Yes.
Can you call Instagram?
I don't know. Yeah, see, I like that one. That was good. Yeah, the flip phone, I get a lot of flack for it, but I tell you what, people want it. Inside, they want it. They want one.
And you
Deep
can
down.
text
Jack
fast.
Bauer
See.
had it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So I have another, this is a little bit digressive, but I want to know for our boys, how do you talk directly about pornography? Like, how do you just go in at it? What are some practical ways about turning when you see something on the streets, when you're walking along the road, when you're, like, how do you approach that? Especially if maybe your background, you haven't been modeled maybe about those types of conversations. I feel like, you know what I mean? Maybe our parents didn't necessarily.
And let's even say the extreme. I mean, growing up, I went to a Christian school, but I had a whole lot of non-Christian friends. So, you know, I was never given an example of when my friends are all looking at pornography.
Right.
Because there's no restriction there. What do you do? How do you
How do
go
you
about
step in
this?
the gap? Yeah. And
How do you
turn
help
away?
your kids maintain relationship without joining, I guess?
Yeah, you know, that peer pressure is always going to be there
Yeah.
with no matter what. And I think just from when they're young, you know, just biblically based, and hey, this is what the Bible says, this is truth, this is what we model ourselves after. You know, that's the authority in our household is God's word. You know, as they experience things on TV or whatnot, and you know, just giving examples. Hey guys, you might go over to somebody's house, you know, you might watch a movie, or they're presented with a movie that, you know, we wouldn't watch at our house. You know, just give us a call, you know, and just say, hey, mom, dad, you know, is this whatever? And so we'll talk it through, and just, hey guys, you're gonna come up to some times where you're gonna have to make a decision to remove yourself. And I know that's gonna be tough, but it's the right thing to do.
So help me out with my very literal engineer's brain.
Yeah.
I doubt the Bible ever says pornography in it. You know, if I look in the index, it doesn't say that.
Right.
Help me out with how do you present that?
Yeah.
How do you present that without just kind of being that Bible-thumper, hey, this is what is
Like
right?
maybe God's
but
heart
instead-
behind it. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the verse is, how can a young man keep his way pure? That's in Psalms. And create in me a clean heart. And just refer back to those. And that's God's desire for us. And he wants that for us. And when you go against that, you know, it's sin. And you separate yourself from God. You know, it's just, I wouldn't say beating that down, but it's just constantly affirming that and constantly encouraging that in them. You know, so it's an action of physically bouncing your eyes or turning away or hopping out of a room and then recalling those scripture verses.
Yeah.
And I think it's just very Holy Spirit led. Like, it just has to be praying over your family and God's, you know, he created us like snowflakes. We're all different. We're wired different. You know, each kid is different, and kind of recognizing their strengths and their weaknesses and saying, okay, this is a weakness. How do we teach self-discipline to this child? Put these boundaries up. Making it hard is okay, like, because then they have to have the self-discipline, but it's more work for you guys, and it's just going to be, you know, setting it up to where you can handle it, I think, where you can, like, work within your giftings to say, okay, I can handle implementing this. Like, it's not too big for me, it's not too, and then just being up for the challenge of whatever that looks like, you know, knowing there'll be battles.
I think also talking about just being content with what you have. There's a, you know, we have different prayers for our kids daily and monthly, and one of them is being content in any and every situation. And just, hey, you know, we have an hour or half an hour or whatever, we're going to stick to that, you know, and then if the complaints come out, said, we can just be done with it for a while. You know, you should be grateful for the time that you get, you know. I think a lot of people want more and more and more. So having that self-discipline, that self-control of just being content with what you have. You know, it stinks because we all want more of whatever, but it's one of the fruits of the Spirit, self-control. And so being content with what we've put in for your family. You know, you don't want to have your own family and sit 7 hours a day on the couch, you know, while your kids are running around or whatever, you're playing Call of Duty, you know, or whatever. And so it's just setting up good life skills for when you have your own kids and your family.
In the areas of, you know, when you're making decisions based on technology or any other, just really praying over that, getting a piece of, like, is this where the Lord wants us to go? Is this how he wants us to teach, you know, based on who our kids are? And again, just that it's not a cookie cutter thing, like what works for us and what worked for us, because again, we're doing this, you know, it just looks so different now because there's just so many new things that have come up, and at younger ages you're having to battle it because your kids are, you know, just being exposed younger. Figure out how to put some boundaries up and live within those.
And I think just when you do make those decisions about technology or whatever, it's just bringing your kids into those decisions of why we're putting these in. And so when you talk to them about, hey, mom and dad have been praying over this, you know, this is where we feel that the Lord is leading us, and this is why we're putting these on, or this is why we've made these decisions, and that he's given us that responsibility to raise you for champions for Christ or what. So
talking them through that a little bit more.
And we stand before the Lord as accountable to how we raise you. So that's something we have to answer to him. And we went through a parenting class one time where they talked about, you know, when you're disciplining your kids, even bringing them into the conversation, like, if you know, like, go against these rules, what would the consequence be? What should that look like? You bring them in and they said, it's a lot hard. They're usually a lot harder on themselves than you would be on them. It was very interesting But to have those conversations and say, we want to give you guys this gift of, having some Nintendo time. We don't want to take away, what do you think that should look like? Do you think that we should fight this for a week before it happens when we're allowing you to have this gift? Or do you think that, I think that's what you were talking about, that relationship, of that you're respecting their opinion and you're listening to their point of view and then, making those decisions as parents, but you're bringing them in to that.
That's great.
I think another thing too is just being in community. Because when we've seen so many marriages over the years just dissolve because they kind of isolated themselves and stayed away from, dropped out of the community groups or shepherding groups at church. But the more that your kids can see you guys involved with a community of other parents, and you guys are discussing and talk about, hey, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked, and that trickles down to them. But for them to see the example of being in community and, whether it's the mom is in a group of moms or the guy is in a group of guys. I mean, I think it's important for guys to be involved with guys too. I've been in one for 12, 13 years or so on a Saturday mornings with same group of guys, and because you're not going at it alone. You've got other people.
There's something powerful about being able to say, man, I'm really struggling with this, and have somebody say, me too.
Totally.
Or
okay, I'm not alone.
Get out
in
of a
that.
cycle that you're maybe like spinning around in.
Or just praying for you, or keeping you accountable during the week. And
All right.
Well, thanks so much,
Thanks,
you guys,
guys.
for sharing and
Appreciate
honesty.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
That was good.
As we're all in the
that's good.
thickets.
Yeah.
Those crazy parenting stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I so enjoyed having Brian and Michelle with us and this conversation about technology. And it really opens up for me some perspective, because I tend to just shut it down. I just want to forget about it. But I think that process of making a decision and really cultivating and discipling our kids through this process, I think there's some takeaways we need to work on.
Especially for us. It is easier for us to avoid than engage. So anyway, thank you for being here with us for this session, and we look forward to you joining us again. And definitely, like we've always said, like Brian actually said too, find a community. Find some people to plug in with, some people for you as an individual and for you as a couple to be able to have good conversations with around parenting.
And thanks for joining us at the family table, where we have conversations that shape the way we parent.